And then you're going to tweet this link out, so
I'm not going to tweet it out.
or I'll find it on YouTube or something. I'll tweet it out, and then you can retweet
I'll
it.
tell CJ to tweet it out through the.
I got it. Just
through the show. The show.
Thing. I got it. I already have it.
You have our Twitter?
I'll tell CJ to tweet it out through the. See?
What are you doing?
I'm getting the link so I can retweet it. Because you know me, I do my homework. I make sure I'm prepared.
It's a good thing somebody is. The light in here is so bright, it's ridiculous.
Yes. Okay, we're good.
Okay, we're good. We're good. All right. Let me go to the outline here, and we're gonna be blah blah blah. Everybody ready?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Can you?
Oh, I should probably start recording.
Yeah, that would help. Can you shoot me the outline link? That's something I asked.
I got you. I got you.
Did you notice he was kind of a dick there? When I said I should start recording, he goes, "Yeah, that'd help."
Ethan, I just emailed it to you. You're good.
Great, thank you, sir.
All right, we clapping?
All right, we're gonna clap as soon as Ethan's recording.
I'm recording.
Oh, that'd be good.
All right.
Make sure you're making love to the microphone when you got things to say.
You betcha.
All right, let's do a clap. 3, 2, 1. I'm going to go ahead and say that was good enough. I have no idea. All right. Hello and welcome to episode 501 of the Player One podcast for Tuesday, June 14th, 2016, E3 week. I'm your host, Greg Seward. Chris Johnston is on assignment at E3. Don't let that fool you into thinking he's going to come back to us with interviews or anything like that. He's not. He's on assignment for his real job. And Phil has been kicked out of California. We don't know where he is. We get Facebook updates from him once in a while, but they're cryptic. So we're not really sure what's going on. But we do have our current, maybe permanent, fourth chair. You might know him as Ethan Einhorn, but the ladies know him as LL Cool E. Hi, Ethan.
Hey there. Glad I could make it right on time. Just had to rush back from a 1984 Ghostbusters screening at the local movie theater. So took my kids and made sure they saw that one before they see the new one, which I think is important. But
how old are your kids?
My daughter is 9, which is exactly the same age I was when I saw the original on its first theatrical run.
Very
and
cool.
My son is 5. Yeah.
Nice. And they loved it?
Yeah, they loved it.
Did they learn any new words?
We had to cover their eyes a couple times when Dan Aykroyd is, getting his pants unzipped. That was a little awkward. Yeah.
That was the movie moment that turned me into a man.
But it was fun.
And joining us this week, he's back after it's been a while since he's guested on the show, but he's one of our favorite guests. The host of, well, actually a podcast network now, the Fitcast Network, hosted Back in My Play, also representing the Beast Coast, Kevin Larrabee.
That's right, back again, ready for some E3 coverage, some potential Larrabee locks, and
well, that's the reason you're here is the Larrabee lock.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. You guys had me on retainer. For every E3 to get at least one Larrabee lock. We know how it went last year. I was 3 for 3, and let's just see what happens this year. Who knows? We have some conferences that are coming up tonight, and of course in the next 2 days. So we'll see what we can do.
And just so everybody listening to this on Tuesday and beyond knows, we're recording this on Sunday night, on the 12th, exactly during the time that the Game 6 of the Stanley Cup playoffs is happening, and I'm a big Pittsburgh Penguins fan, so. If I'm distracted, that's why. But for now, let's jump right in. So we're doing this. There has actually been one press conference already, I believe, which was Electronic Arts.
Yes.
I have not seen that yet, but there was a little bit of information leaked. So we're going to jump right into that on the news and topics section here.
Okay.
So let's jump in with the first thing. I don't know if I wish Phil was here to talk about this, but there was a new LEGO Dimensions trailer released last week. And the cool thing about this is that it's not a new game. It's actually just new sets for the original game, which is nice. That's the way those games should work, as far as I'm concerned.
Like Rock Band.
Exactly, like Rock Band. They should be a platform. And so, I mean, some of the stuff that's in there is fantastic. Some of the characters, like Sonic the Hedgehog, was in there. E.T. was in there. Harry Potter, I believe, was in there. Which was also Newt Scamander, I think, whoever the character is in the new movie that's coming out. He was in there as well. I can't think of all the other characters in there, but it was great. I mean, there was a ton of them.
Well, and you got to wonder, when you go into a Lego store and you see that, like, damn near 1/4 of the store is dedicated to Star Wars, you have to think that if they're not doing the Infinity stuff, that you might end up seeing Lego Star Wars in Dimensions.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping that that's the case. For exactly that reason, because that would be amazing. Like, you know, how great would that be? But I'm just sort of jumping into this here, see what else I can see. Ghostbusters, the new Ghostbusters. So Ghostbusters is actually one of the nicest level packs that came out in Dimensions, and now they've got the cast of the new Ghostbusters in this trailer, which is great.
Awesome.
Who else? I'm going to do this real quick. Like I said, Harry Potter. We've got... Mission Impossible, of all things. There's a Mission Impossible scene in this trailer. A little weird, yeah. Oh, and of course the Goonies. See, if Phil was here, that would have been the first thing he said.
Yeah,
the Goonies was represented.
The Goonies is awesome. Incidentally, just a quick aside on Mission Impossible. I've always felt like that is a movie, unlike something like Indiana Jones, where it's about the character. It's like that's Tom Cruise action movie Part 5.
Yeah, it's absolutely, and that's the reason why they've been so good. So much fun, anyway, to watch. Because that's literally all it is. The other thing that Phil would have gone nuts about is Adventure Time. Adventure Time, big part in that trailer.
You said Mission Impossible. Is there a John Voight figure?
I did not see a John. All I saw was the Tom Cruise figure. You know what other figure was in there that was amazing? Mr. T. This game's got 100% more T in it than the last one.
It's so weird with this series, and I love that you guys love this, but it is kind of weird that it is like a game made for dads.
Gremlins. Anyway, I'm not gonna. I could go on and on. It's amazing. I'm so excited. I'm so happy to hear that they didn't announce a new game. It's just like, okay, here's a bunch of new packs you can buy if you want. And that's exactly what I wanted.
Well, and they're doubling down. So any kind of concern about the Toys to Life stuff going away, it looks like these guys are seeing the decline of Infinity as an opportunity and not as a warning sign.
Exactly. That's exactly what I think they're doing too. It's like, okay, all of our major competition is disappearing. It's Lego, man.
Well, and it's funny. So we had an interesting experience just earlier today where my son was given his very first dedicated game machine. We gave him the DS, which is what I did with my daughter. Just kind of gets him into it, make sure he can be responsible enough before we get him like an actual 2DS or 3DS. And he liked it, but one of the things he said was that he wasn't super excited because I quote him as a 5-year-old, I'm too into my Lego career right now.
Amen to that, little man.
So that's why Lego Dimensions is so perfect, because it kind of bridges the gap.
So a couple of the things moving on here. Of course, we've been talking about this a lot in the last few weeks, actually, which is the iterative hardware from Sony and Microsoft. So first things first, Sony has confirmed the PS4 Neo is a thing, and that it will not be at E3.
Yeah, that's a bummer. I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, well, I wonder if they'll at least give us more information. They just won't show it. But that would be weird, I guess. They'd have to show it if they were going to talk about it.
Still plenty of PS4s that need to be sold, so it makes really no sense if they're going to talk about this now unless it's coming out this month, which, it's not. So it's a fall release. We'll probably get more information at TGS or something like that.
And then moving on to Microsoft, again, talking about iterative hardware, although this is not the iterative hardware. This is the Slim. The design of the Slim was leaked today. It looks not bad. To be honest, it looks about as wide as two Xbox One controllers. I would say
40% slimmer.
it's 40% smaller than than the previous Xbox One. Otherwise, it looks like an Xbox. It looks like a much slimmer Xbox One, which was why it's called the Slim.
Also, there's a button on the eject. It is no longer capacitive. It is a
Thank
physical
God.
button on the eject.
I hate capacitive buttons.
Yeah.
I was so happy when Sony redesigned the PS3 and they got rid of them, I always thought it was kind of funny because right around the same time, Microsoft redesigned the 360 and added them. But I've turned systems on and off so many times by mistake, like while I'm cleaning them or something like that, because of those damn buttons.
And I actually like the functionality of seeing what the button is. That's the problem I have with PS4, because I do constantly forget which one is eject and which one is shut down.
Yeah, I know so many people that have that problem. I don't, but I have turned it. Like I said, that's one of the worst offenders. Where if I'm cleaning the thing, I turn it on like constantly, and I don't mean to. And the thing is that with the PS4, I don't know. It's just it doesn't turn off again right away. Like with the Xbox One, you can turn it off again right away, I think. But anyway, either way, I hate capacitive buttons. So bring on the physical buttons.
Do you
the
think
Slim
it's
looks
worth
nice.
do you think it's also worth mentioning that it has 4K support, so for 4K video and video output, I should say. Sorry, go ahead.
Has there been any information? I mean, I know as of right now, there's been no information regarding price. But have they talked about anything about like the HDMI pass through or?
No, this picture is the only thing that's leaked, and it is like basically a pre-order section from the Microsoft Xbox website, and I mean it is you get a guess it's probably going to be around $400. We're talking a 2 terabyte hard drive, where right now the 349 version has the 1 terabyte, the 299 has the 500 gig. And also, it is still, though it is 40% smaller, it's still quite a bit larger than the PS4 is right now.
Is it quite a bit larger? Because I would say, because they've got this picture has an image of an Xbox One controller sitting atop.
It is wider and taller and deeper.
Okay.
Well, you can.
We don't want it.
You can set it, up vertically, which is nice too.
Yeah. Yeah. Either way,
I dig that.
looks pretty nice. I mean, I'm not going to be getting one anytime soon, but it looks pretty nice. It's definitely not the behemoth that the original one is.
Yeah. Again, I think the big story is going to be when we can see what the back of the box looks like. Because that's the thing. I just want to know if they're still doing the HDMI in.
Do you care about that?
I do.
I'm just curious because it just, from the historical perspective of the platform's development, it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it's going to be full plutonic reversal if they take it out, I guess.
If for some reason I ever ended up with one, which I'm not saying I never will, I wouldn't run out and grab one right away, but I have traded in the past. Like I know with the 360, I ended up with a different version just because I got sick of sending in my original over and over again for the red ring.
Right.
Luckily, the one hasn't had that problem, but my entertainment center is set up around the fact that I'm passing my cable box through my Xbox One. It would change a lot if I couldn't do that.
I think obviously most people won't care one or the other, but it would be fun to see on stage, like, Phil Spencer bring out Don Matrick and, lean him over his... just lean him over his knee and just spank him, and... then it would be kind of a comic bit and would go well with the audience.
True.
That's not the Larrabee lock. That is not going to be what I'm going to predict for E3. But like you said, entertaining, sure.
It would be entertaining. So something else interesting that's happening, which is very cool, is that people, of course, are at the show right now, or they've gone to LA and they're getting ready for the show. They've got their passes, which come with lanyards, which of course this year are sponsored by Nintendo. And interestingly enough, Link is on the lanyard, and what appears to be possibly a female Link is on the other end of the lanyard.
That's great.
That's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We'll see. Though that could also just be Zelda.
Well, and I wonder also that the Hero Warriors made such a big deal out of Linkle being a
Mhm.
dedicated character, and that's cool. But now I've heard so many people referring to female Link as Linkle, and
Yeah.
I don't think it's one and the same. I think that this is just like female Link.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's more just of an avatar, an avatar, really. I mean, they've set it up as far as the story goes in those games anyway, right? That I mean, Link's always a different person anyway.
Yeah.
So why couldn't it be a woman?
Yep. Well, it makes you wonder also, like, will they go any further and like allow you to change the color of his skin?
That would be interesting. Really, just go all out.
Yeah, just let the character look like the person playing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably going to be small steps. Getting a female playable character in The Legend of Zelda is going to be huge within itself. And like you guys said, the problem with all this stuff that we're talking about is like we'll know in 48 hours. But
Yeah, exactly. By the time you listen to this show, if you're not listening live,
You'll know.
these
the answers to
buttheads-
this will already be there. So
Yeah.
we're guessing on a lot of stuff, but still very cool. I mean, when I saw that, I was like, okay, this is a nice little sort of tidbit of information. Wasn't
Well,
expecting.
really, reeling back to the EA press conference, which you had kicked off with, I was interesting to see on Twitter that Andrew Reiner from Game Informer gave it a D-. So
For
said
the
that.
EA press conference.
Yep.
Well, we
Is there
didn't.
a bigger story to that? Because I see that
Yeah, we didn't run
Kevin
down.
had it list. So let's jump to that then.
Yeah, we didn't run down everything on that. There were a couple of things announced.
Sure, go for it.
Primarily their big two things. Sandwiched. Or I guess three things. You had your Titanfall 1, or excuse me, Titanfall 2 at the start with the single player, which was already leaked, confirmed, and
I
you
would
also
play
had
it then. I liked
Yeah.
Titanfall. I just hate playing multiplayer shooters, so I might play that.
Yeah,
Right.
and presumed since the first one came out. It's like if they're going to
Mhm.
do a sequel and it's going to be multi-platform, what's the one thing that would massively differentiate it?
Mhm.
Right.
And also there was a pretty fantastic multiplayer video montage, which again, if you like Titanfall 1, you're gonna really love Titanfall 2. The action and the mechanics of that multiplayer just looked like an absolute blast in terms of also adding a grappling hook, so you can grapple not just onto mechs into buildings, but also onto enemies, and you can like kind of almost do like a Just Cause 3, like pull yourself towards them and then kick them.
Just like that
and
character in
melee them.
Overwatch.
I don't
There's
know.
a character in Overwatch that has that move.
Well,
Drives me
grappling hooks
nuts.
have been around since Bionic Commando, so I mean, that's nothing incredibly new. But
No, still.
so they also had their EA Sports package, which was leveraged primarily on FIFA and Madden, where FIFA is
Makes
now
sense.
getting a story mode for the create a character. So you
Really?
Can actually yeah,
That's
just kind of
cool.
like very much like what NBA 2K did
Mhm.
the last couple of years, and with Madden, it's more Madden, and they also leveraged quite a bit the esports initiative that they're
Right.
putting together, where they are trying to really build the EA version of EA Sports competitions that include Madden and Battlefield. There's 3 tiers for all that stuff, and they're trying to just kind of get in on all that esports money. And they have partnerships with people like ESPN for Madden, and it just seems to make sense that they want to have control over their own esports for Battlefield, for FIFA,
Oh, sure.
for Madden, and all that stuff.
Sure.
Well, and I gotta say, I have such mixed feelings about EA as a publisher, because there are times in which they can create truly astonishing stuff and really delight core fans. Dragon Age Inquisition, when it came out, was my favorite game of the year. But I've kind of come to the conclusion that there's like a EA Alpha, which is the EA that is more powerful and that really wants its customers to spend hundreds of dollars on, the sports team cards and the Simpsons donuts and the Star Wars gems. And then you have like the EA Beta, which does things like Mirror's Edge and
which isn't going to
Titanfall.
make any money.
Well, and that's the thing, though. But you have to wonder because you could jam microtransactions into Mirror's Edge. I mean, they did put them into Assassin's Creed, right? But it seems like there's a clear ethos within some of those development teams where they don't want to do that, and those tend to almost without exception be the better games. So it's like there's a lot of real creative spirit and value and respect for the customers. Need for a good value proposition within some EA games, but then other ones like the amount of money people are spending on FIFA is just mind blowing.
Yeah.
And
so it was before they added things like Ultimate Team and Esports. That's the thing. It's like just as a premium game, just as a game that you spent $70 on every year or $60 on every year, that game made money hand over fist. I mean, it's the most popular sport in the world.
But I guess I just wonder with something like Titanfall, which had the burn cards, remember? Like, Respawn really took a strong position to say, we're not going to try to get you to spend thousands of dollars in this game. Those are not going to be purchased cards. Will they stay with that? I hope so. I hope this is EA Beta and not EA Alpha.
Well, I could see that totally happening. I mean, this is something that EA does every year, or other year, I should say. It seems like this really reminds me of the year that Dead Space and Mirror's Edge came out, where it's like those two games were clearly sort of a labor of love. Like it's just I'm sure they hoped for them to be massive hits, but they definitely didn't fit within that sort of EA mold of sports games or sequels, right?
I think let's show the whole thing before we get into it, because I feel like we're kind of talking about it without giving the full picture of the event.
That's fair.
So outside of that, and again, like they're going to have sports every year. They're a sports game company, and Madden and FIFA are their two biggest sports games, with NHL also being there as well. We're not getting an NBA Live this year because that has been not up to par. It has not even been close to.
They need to just give up on NBA.
Well, I mean, they also own NBA Jam, and they own NBA Street, so they can make use of that NBA license to do other stuff. It's not like they have to just do that. And it has been a while since we've seen NBA Jam, and of course NBA Street didn't even come in the last generation of consoles. So there is some room for that stuff.
Well, but wait, Kevin, just to counter that for a second, I mean, first of all, I think NBA Jam negates NBA Street, frankly, in terms of being
like one or the other.
No, okay, great. But even there, like, what can NBA Jam possibly be other than a $15 to $20 kind of Xbox PSN digital download?
Hey, that sounds like a great idea. You should work
I'd love it too. Yeah, I'd love it too. But I mean, is that enough to say they should stay focused on basketball?
They're paying for the license. They might as well use it for something. They're in a contract with the NBA and the Players Association. They have to use that. Otherwise, they're just throwing the money out, and they clearly have been throwing it out the last couple of years because those games have not sold well enough. And everyone, we all know people that make video games, they work their asses off. But unfortunately, that team has not been able to put together a product in the time and the resources that they've had to bring something to the table that could compete with NBA 2K. It just hasn't been there. It hasn't been there since NBA 2K. Like, they've been trying for the last 18 years, it just not, or 17 years. It just has not happened. So that's why I'm saying they should leverage the two franchises that have been, for the most part, universally successful. The NBA Jam that came out on the Wii and then later on the 360 and the PS3 was a good game. It was a very good game, and it sold relatively well, but they positioned it by making it a Wii exclusive to start, which was probably a mistake when they put that together. If they originally put it out as not a retail $50 game, but instead, what you just said, a $20 or even a $30 digital game, that would have been a badass thing, and I'm sure a ton of people would have jumped on it for $20. But they have to pivot because NBA Live is not working out. And
yeah, I agree with that. I don't know what they do, but they don't
Hey, you know what? Who doesn't love NBA Street? We don't have an arcade basketball game right now. We don't have an arcade football game right now. All these games that are coming out.
Sports games right now.
That's what I'm saying. It's like right now the barrier to entry in terms of the difficulty and the complexity of these sports games is way too high. I've stopped playing NBA 2K games because they're too complex.
It's the Tony Hawk effect, really. That's what I call it, just because it seems to me like that's sort of the first series that ended up doing that, where those games were always good, well, till the end, but the thing was after a while, if you were a beginner, you were screwed when you played those games. You had no idea what to do when you played them. And like I mentioned, the new NASCAR game that was announced a couple weeks ago when I was talking about that on the show, in their press release, they even admitted that. And it was the people who were responsible for it. Like, they admitted that the final game that EA had released, NASCAR 09, it was a really good game, but it had gone so sim that it didn't cater to new fans or casual fans at all. Like you said, the barrier to entry was so high, and I'm one of those people that loves that. I played those games for years and years, I love them, and it was too hardcore for me.
Well, and you know, the thing on the other end of the spectrum is you look at basketball, and I think that there is either an Oakland or San Francisco team called the Warriors, but I might be wrong on that. And if I'm right, I have no idea who anyone is on that team, right? And I've been living in San Francisco for more than 13 years. I just don't follow that stuff. But nonetheless, when NBA Jam was in arcades, I played a ton of it. When NFL Blitz came out on Dreamcast, I bought it day one. Not because I cared at all about the teams or the sport, but because they're fun video games.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying is, like, again, let's try something else, because live is not working. But again, I don't know if we should talk about NBA Live for 30 minutes.
Yeah, we're getting off track here. So let's go back into the EA.
Hold on. Again, let me give you the complete rundown. So again, we started with Titanfall 2. Then afterwards, we got to see some single player and multiplayer. Both looked, in my view, fantastic. I thought they both looked incredibly impressive and like a lot of fun, like what you would kind of see as an evolution for those games. They also showed a small team game of four. I believe it was 4 developers working on this game called Fee, which we saw some art of. We saw a little bit of the game, and we don't really know exactly what the game is all about. It's very artistic, and it's one of those things where EA does make some smaller games for hearts and minds, or whatever you want to say, for the hardcore audience. But it is cool that they do that stuff. We also saw a huge, well, not huge, but they talked about Mass Effect, Andromeda.
Really?
Not Andromeda. No, it is Andromeda. And it was really just, again, going into the offices, showing a lot of the like behind-the-scenes development process. But what they did show of what looked like gameplay, it didn't say like actual game footage on the screen, looked really good. The art design looks fantastic, and if you liked Mass Effect, the previous games, you're probably going to be looking forward to what they're putting together with this. But it doesn't look like it is far enough along where they can say, "Hey, right, live demo." But who knows? Maybe we'll see it tomorrow when it comes to Microsoft or Sony and in their press conference.
Or if not, it'll come out in a couple of years.
Right.
But that's cool to hear that it's happening. It's funny. I had just as an aside, I had to take my son to the doctor this week, and we were sitting in the waiting room. There was a guy who came in, probably in his, I would say, late 60s, maybe early 70s. He sits down and he pulls out a novel that he's reading, and it was one of the Mass Effect novels.
Yeah.
Which was, I just thought it was great. It's like, not that, I'm a 40-year-old man. I play video games, but it was just like, that's kind of cool. Anyway.
If those games did anything incredibly well, they did a lot of things incredibly well. The lore and the backstory was, hit out of the park. And I'm sure they have a lot of stuff to build off of for the sequel, or I guess they're making another trilogy. We don't exactly know, but I have faith in BioWare to put together some badass stuff, and they've had a couple of years to put it together, so I'm not that worried.
Well, and you got to remember, absence does make the heart grow fonder. Where, the Dragon Age stuff, I was positive to neutral on, but when Inquisition came out, it had been long enough since Dragon Age 2 for me to get really excited, and then I just fell in love with the world all over again.
Right, and the internet shitstorm of the ending of Mass Effect 3 was a bunch of.
I hated that.
It was a bunch of internet,
and that was a big mess right from the start.
But like you said, there's been a lot of separation since the third game, so I think a lot of people are very excited for what's coming next. They also had a huge package talking about all of the new Star Wars games. They're working on, I believe, 4 Star Wars games right now, working on continuations of packs for Battlefront and also for their iOS game. But they also talked about the games that are being worked on by the Titanfall developers, and also Amy Hennig's game. And again, it was a lot of like, hey, this is us working in offices and working really hard on the game, but they didn't have anything to show for those games because they are still quite a ways off. And then they finished off with a big piece on Battlefield 1, which had a big piece of multiplayer footage, which they showed off relatively oddly. Like they showed the first 15 seconds of the trailer, then they stopped it. Then they had a guy come out and talk about Titanfall. Excuse, did it again, Battlefield 1, and then they restarted the whole trailer all over again. So you had to watch those same like 15 or 20 seconds again, and then you saw the whole trailer, and they basically wrapped it up from there into a live 1 hour event where it was just multiplayer matches featuring your favorite celebrities like Snoop Dogg and Jamie Foxx. And
I heard Snoop was basically smoking some of the Mary Jane right on camera.
The EA post conference leading into the multiplayer event was an absolute shit show. It was terribly hosted. Unfortunately, like again, the guy I'm sure was doing his best, but I don't know what he had to work with. I don't know what he did for prep time, but it was really rough. And the people that were going to see that game, for the most part, looked like they couldn't give a shit for being there. I mean, they were getting their paycheck, and there were some awesome people like the fantastic Terry Crews that always is an incredible person when he shows up to things and is very generous and very polite. But there were some people that were just kind of like, there were some NFL guys that kind of were just like, yeah, I like video games, and they invited me to this video game thing, so that's cool. But it was a very interesting thing to watch. But the important thing is Battlefield 1 is incredibly impressive graphically.
I can't wait. This is the first time I've been excited for a Battlefield game.
Mm-hmm. And we have 64-player multiplayer, and they showed up one map where it had I don't want to call it a hot air balloon. What would it be called? A hydrogen blimp, I guess is what it would be. But they showed action in battles from that aspect where that can actually fall down in any place in the map and cause destruction. Everything is completely destructible on the map.
Frostbite engine still, right?
Right. Everything EA showed today was running on Frostbite 3 except Madden.
Oh, right, because FIFA is running on Frostbite now too. Right.
Everything but that and Fee, the not the indie game, but the small team game. Everything is running on Frostbite.
So here's the one thing that does concern me a bit. Outside of the indie games, and I know Mass Effect is going to have a really substantive single-player experience, or at least that would be my presumption. It does sound like EA, and not just EA, but a lot of publishers this year are really going to be doubling, tripling down on these, expansive games as a service kind of multiplayer experiences. And so I'm just hoping that the awesome games that we got this past year, like Rise of the Tomb Raider and Quantum Break and Fallout 4, these and Mirror's Edge, these terrific single-player experiences, that we still get plenty of those. Because I'll be really bummed.
It's just EA though, man.
I think we will, but I think when you get into shooters, you're going to see a lot less single-player. Because let's be honest,
they sell on multiplayer.
Exactly. I mean, you look at Call of Duty, and the single-player has been an afterthought in that series for ages now. For good reason. That's not where they're making any money. But I don't think that means that we're going to see a lot fewer single-player games. I still think you're always going to see a fair amount of those as well. I just think that as far as first-person shooters go, maybe not so much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fair enough.
And I think this is worth putting together at the end of this is that again it's kind of another head scratcher from Polygon. Again, people that are trying to do their best, and and I apologize if I get a little bit crazy here for a second, because we're recording this the day of a tragedy where 50 people were murdered in a nightclub in Orlando, and
the worst mass shooting in the history of the country.
Yeah,
exactly. And there's the world that we live in terms of politics, and everyone feeling like they need to voice their opinion on a certain event is something that can sometimes be very frustrating looking from the outside. And it sucks when you're using something like E3, an event that is there to almost take your mind off of things, take your mind off a horrible event like today. And Polygon thought, or I guess this was Polygon via The Verge or whatever. It's Chris Plant over there. He basically said, how, and this is paraphrasing, how dare EA try to sell games with shooting and violence today? And it just excuse me, it friggin' sucks when any outlet, I don't care if it's a news outlet, I don't care if it's a video game news outlet, uses this as an opportunity to stir shit up.
Yep, absolutely. I 100% agree with you. I read the article, and he's out of everyone, I feel like they're the ones that come off being just complete, just I don't even know the word. I like they're cashing in on this tragedy.
Sorry, you can't say, "Hey guys, I'm sorry. You know what? Battlefield 1 canceled. You know what? Titanfall canceled because there was a tragedy today." No, you can't do that. They are businesses. It is a company, and you know what? They have plans for this stuff, and you can't just say we're canceling E3. It's a tragic event, and the last thing that you want to do is change the way that you would want to do things because some piece of shit decided to go into a nightclub and cause a horrible event like this. So no, you can't do this. So
Kevin, I was just going to say, one of the bits of hypocrisy also is like if Polygon said, as a result, we feel uncomfortable covering games that are focused on gunplay, so we're not going to cover first-person shooters anymore. That would be them making a decision that would, have an effect on their business. But that they're going to have full reviews of these games when they come out.
This same person has a story about Titanfall 2's battle systems. Right below this.
Well, that's just it.
I mean,
it's just clickbait. It's just clickbait, and I'm sorry. I mean, like I said, I think that as far as EA and everything that's going to be shown this week at E3, because there'll be a lot of shooters shown at E3 this week. That's terrible timing, and it's but they're also that media is not the reason what happened.
Right.
But Polygon is taking advantage of the situation in a despicable way.
And lots of media outlets do, but this is fucking video games, guys. Like, what are we doing? Like, this is, and I apologize. Like, it's been a real shit day because I mean, like I'm sure we all do. We have I have family members and friends that are gay and lesbian and transgender, bisexual, and to see this stuff today, to see the words that are also spewed on these news stories, backing up the horrible events that happened today is just absolutely disgusting, and adding to this fire as it's just, I mean, it's again, sorry, we're a video games podcast, and I apologize for getting a little bit overly emotional, but it's been a friggin' emotional day.
Well, I mean,
for all of us.
The end of the day, I mean, fantasy-based media is glorifying violence. Yes, that's definitely an issue, and it's something that, I mean, you need to have discussion about for sure, but what needs to be fixed is the hatred. The hatred is what causes events like this.
Well, and going back just to the mechanics of games, IGN had a really good interview recently with Cliff Bleszinski, and he was explaining that the reason shooters became so popular was not explicitly because of an attraction to violence, but just that's the easiest way to interact with a 3D environment.
Sure. It's all, I don't know. I don't really want to get into this because it's not something that I feel we should get into.
Totally, it's just
show.
like don't support this.
I am glad you brought it up, Kevin. It's a terrible event, and I think it's really cowardly to put an article out like that, especially calling out a company that has got an event going on. Like you said, I mean, what are they going to do? Their entire business is built around it. If you really feel this strongly about it, why haven't you been railing against these games for years? But that outlet never has the courage of its own convictions. They go out and they yell and they scream, and then it's business as usual the next day. They're doing exactly what they're accusing the video game industry of doing, and it's just hypocritical.
And again, I apologize for getting like a little bit crazy about that stuff, but in a day when I've been in tears and like seeing my friends message me about stuff, and friends in Orlando, and I was like literally just in Orlando last weekend, and to see this stuff happen is just, and the best part is this is right next to a story about the shooting. It's. Yeah. It's a head scratcher to the point where they need to close their comments, and then they just don't even allow for a discussion. Like, it's just, let's talk about happier things, please.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So now that we've talked about that, and like I said, I don't want to minimize it at all, but we're gonna move on. One more thing before we get into what you've been playing. Any predictions for what we're going to see this week? We got any Larrabee locks coming up?
Why don't you guys start first? Give me a second.
Ethan, you got any predictions on what we're going to see or what you're hoping we're going to see in the next few days?
Well, I would love to see what the Serpico is. I don't think we will, but I think what you are going to see is some type of conversation about Oculus and how it's going to be coming to Xbox platforms. And I think that they're going to keep that ambiguous, but I think that's going to be a big part of the kind of just hold off, wait and see, don't necessarily buy PSVR yet because we have something that is going to be a lot more powerful, and you're just going to have to wait an additional year. They have to communicate that somehow.
Yep, I think you're absolutely right. They can't let this show go without throwing sort of a wrench into the works where Sony's going to be selling that thing in the next 4 months.
Yeah, and I'll go into it later when we're talking what you've been playing, but I have been spending a lot of time this week with the Gear VR, and I am now convinced that even if you're talking about something lower spec than the Oculus or Vive, you're still getting such an astonishingly cool experience that the PSVR is almost certain to blow people's minds.
Yep, I agree with that. And we'll get into that later on in the what you've been playing. I'll say that. I agree with everything you're saying. I think this will be the E3 of VR. I'm really curious to see how it's handled, just because obviously that's not something you can demo really well over a 2D video on the internet. But now that we know that we're not going to see a whole lot about hardware, I don't think that Microsoft's going to. I think you're right. They'll hint at the next iteration of Xbox One hardware, but I don't think they'll come out and just. I don't think we'll see tons and tons of details.
And I don't think you're going to hear a damn thing about AR either, the HoloLens.
No, I think that's... Well, we'll see. I didn't expect to see it last year either.
It'll muddle the message. I think right now the important thing is the mind share, the people knowing what Oculus is and having a general sense that that's the best version, is going to be something they're going to want to capitalize on.
I guess all I'll say is that if they don't go hardcore into Oculus on Xbox, then you will see HoloLens because that's the only thing they've got.
Yeah.
To talk about. Other than that, I really don't know. I kind of, in the last few years, the way I've come at E3 is that I don't pay a ton of attention to the preamble. So when I watch the press conferences, it's kind of all new and exciting. So.
Well, here's one other thing on the Xbox beat, though. Last year I think that they had by far the strongest first-party lineup. Between the big three, but apparently none of them performed to expectations. I was just reading an article in Kotaku about Fable Legends closing, and they were saying that Phil Spencer was under a lot of pressure because Halo 5 performed below expectations, and they also obviously didn't have a new IP with Quantum Break, and so that side, the Microsoft Studio side, is really hurting. So I'm going to be really curious to see what, if anything, they show besides Gears 4.
Well, what I think will be more interesting about it too, which what I'm curious about is that are we going to hear almost everything as a Windows 10 game as well?
I can virtually guarantee that that'll be the case. Yeah, and I bet you anything that the Serpico, again, one of the key things is to ensure that not only is it compatible with Oculus, but it allows you to truly fulfill that dream of everything being Windows 10.
Yeah. I think so, because we've talked about that before, and their first-party stuff is just not performing. You're right, and even without them coming out and saying it, it's been kind of everybody's suspicion that that's the case.
And I want to qualify, not performing despite being fantastic.
Great games.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yep, for sure. What about you, Kevin? You got a Larrabee lock for us before we move on to what you've been playing?
Unfortunately, the locks that I've kind of been hearing about, I don't feel comfortable talking about. I've been hearing some stuff. That's the thing, is when you travel and you talk to a lot of people, I think there's a couple things. It's a little bit further off, but I'm worried about the NX quite a bit, and it's partially from things that I've been hearing in terms of rumors and stuff like that, and also. I think Nintendo, who knows, but they've been coming off of two poor pieces of hardware, and they really have a lot to live up to for the NX. They're very much, I believe, not necessarily a Sega situation, but in a situation where, again, I think the Wii U and the 3DS have both really been bad pieces of hardware compared to the great libraries of video games that they both have.
The 3DS, really?
Yeah, I think 3DS is a really it's bad hardware with a great library of video games.
My understanding is the tech level of the 3DS is not the new 3DS, but the more common one is on par with the iPhone 3G from a tech level, which is way behind the loop. I will say that the Wii U. It's not as powerful as Xbox One or PS4, but the games that they have released on it, especially the first party, have been consistently excellent, and I've loved that device. And I think that
I'm just talking about the hardware. The games have been fantastic.
But even the hardware, like the fact that you have that second screen, has made that device something that is more meaningful to me than the other two platforms because it's made game accessibility so much better for me. I love
but the PS4 has it in the Vita. In terms of like remote play and stuff like that. What I mean is, like, I have known Nintendo as a company that has had fantastic hardware, from the Game Boy to the Game Boy Pocket to the Game Boy Advance to the Game Boy SP to the DS to the DS. Well, maybe not the DS. The DS Lite. And even the GameCube, even the Wii, like, those were great pieces of hardware that performed incredibly well. When we got a system like, and I apologize. Like, again, I think the 3DS is a fantastic library. Two of my most anticipated games right now are Dragon Quest on the 3DS, and I just got Kirby that we'll talk about in a little bit, which is an absolute blast. But I think the hardware itself is cheap, overpriced, terrible battery life, poor performance, and it just survives because it has a great library. And I think with the Wii U, that is just not going to have longevity, because I was talking with CJ about this. Like, hey, guess what? If your gamepad dies in 5 years, good luck.
Yeah, but okay, so with the NX, this is what I'm going to say. First of all, it is the hardware that I'm looking more forward to than any of the others.
Same here, man.
I'm going to be there day one at a midnight launch to buy 2 of them.
But you can't.
But you don't even know what it is.
You don't even know what it is. Like, how can you say that when it might be like a friggin' Apple TV?
Yeah, I mean, I get your excitement about it, Ethan, but that's not really proof of something that's going to be great. That's just.
Well, I mean, the thing is I hear what you're saying, except with actually the exception of the Wii, the one that was most popular, I've loved all of their hardware. And the reason I didn't love the Wii was because it was 480p in a 720p world,
But I mean, okay. I mean, yeah.
Anyway,
I apologize. We don't have to.
Yeah, let's not get too bogged down in this.
Happy things. Well, I know Recore. Recore is something that I really want to see. Some screens leaked out from that today. Those are the guys that are previously of the Metroid Prime team. I believe it's Armature Studios now, and they showed that off last year. And it is not what's his name, the Mega Man guy.
Inafune.
Inafune-san is I guess working on that, but who knows? With Mighty Number 9 looking like a garbage fire, but since Armature is a team of proven developers, and again I think the look looks fantastic, and it was one of the reasons why I did have a Xbox One for a while last year. Again, I agree with Ethan. Microsoft hit it out of the park last E3, and so did Sony. But the real thing, I think, outside of Recore, is I would love to see Yu Suzuki come out on stage and show some Shenmue 3. It's been a year, and show something. Have him walk around.
Love to see an update.
Yeah, have him walk around a town. You don't even have to do anything. Like, I think if he did that, I think the audience would go nuts and say, "Hey, guess what? We have Slacker backer right now," and I'm sure people would give him some more money too.
Speaking of Kickstarter games, Igarashi's the update to Castlevania,
Bloodstain.
basically. That apparently for backers, whatever they're showing at the show was going to be available for backers this week as well.
And it looks great. The stuff that they've shown looks.
Can't wait to play.
I looked it up and I backed it for $100, Greg. I can't
So
imagine that.
here's what I'm going to guess, and this is obviously just broad speculation right now, but I think that when Bloodstained comes out, you're going to see scores in the 85 to 90 range.
How can you already grade it?
Because I'll tell you exactly why. Because you're looking at they're trying to build a game that is in the mold of 2D games when they were at their absolute golden age by the
Symphony
people who
of the
knew
Night,
exactly how to do that. Yeah, I think Symphony of the Night is arguably the best 2D platform game ever made, right? Or in terms of just a craft, right?
Yeah, totally.
That's
It's a
where it
fantastic
hit.
game. Yep.
So now that, by contrast, when Shenmue 3 comes out, I think that, and I have supported that game. It probably is going to be in the 60 to 65 range because it's going to be probably quite faithful to the early games, and it was a game of the pre-Grand Theft Auto 3 era that had a lot of great ideas but is clumsy as hell, it's gonna feel very dated.
But okay, Ethan, I love you, man, and you have some of my favorite opinions on this show. But that unfortunately, we have not seen anything from Shenmue 3. He is not saying I'm going to be stuck in the confines of 2000 when I make this game. They have access to the Unreal Engine. They have access to a ton of money from backers and from Sony. So what I'm trying to say is it sounds like a prediction that's based off of almost nothing.
Well, I'm just I'm saying that
a pessimistic view that I don't understand because we just haven't seen enough of what they've put together so far outside of some screens and some very short videos, which I think they actually look really good. What we've seen in the last couple updates actually has looked much better than what they predicted would have been the look of the game when they put together the Kickstarter package about a year ago.
So, Kevin, let me put it to you this way, in the most selfish way possible, okay? So, as somebody who, I have happily a signed Yu Suzuki Shenmue poster,
Nerd.
and...
Don't make me load up this passport disc and show you some character designs of what you can do on a Dreamcast in 1999.
I gave a great review to Shenmue 2 and had a fierce debate with Mark McDonald and John Davison about that. So, I mean, I love that franchise. So, if the game turns out to be, something in the 90s, I win because I get an awesome version of a new game. If it turns out to be in the 60s, I sound smart because I've predicted it beforehand.
But you don't need to bet on red and black. You don't need to do that. And I think if it gets, again, it might be a good game, it might be a bad game. The only thing that I don't want is something like I was talking with JJ84 about this morning is the original and the sequel get so much back hate. Because it's just kind of really cool to crap on Shenmue these days with people that either didn't play it or they haven't even touched it since the year 2000. So, booting it up today, it's still a very visually impressive game through VGA, and it did a lot of things that some games today don't do as well. And I don't think it's going to have the intricacies of the original or the sequel, but I think what they will deliver on, and again, they may or they may not, but what I've seen so far has not led me to believe that they won't. That's where I'm going to go. I'm going to go into a positive view. I wouldn't start at 0 and work my way up to 100.
I feel like it's going to feel like a Yakuza game.
Perfect. Great. That's
my prediction on it.
8 out of 10.
Moving on. One other thing that I saw today that I wanted to talk about real quick before we get into what you've been playing, which we are going to get into, is that there were some screenshots, or at least a screenshot, of Telltale's Batman game.
That looks so cool.
It looks so cool. Yeah, I'm really excited. I have been excited about it anyway. I want to be excited about a Telltale game. And, I mean, oh, God, I lost the name of it. A Wolf Among Us was fantastic.
And it's on their new engine. It's a new engine.
Yeah, thank God. That's the only thing that's been holding their games back, and now I'm just super excited. I can't wait. I'm interested to see if they announce anything else. I know I have to play their Borderlands game because apparently their Borderlands game is fantastic as well.
It is better. I liked it more than the Gearbox stuff. I love narrative stuff, and I loved Borderlands 2, but they did a great job with that. They're such good storytellers.
I have a bunch of friends who are not Borderlands fans who played those games and said you gotta play them.
Yeah.
So anyway, anything else we want to talk about E3 real quick? I don't want to get into a debate about how good or bad it's going to be, but is there anything else we want to talk about for E3?
My VMU just turned on.
It's still working.
What the hell? All right.
That's weird.
That was
So
weird.
I guess here's the one last thing I'd want to say. Now that you've had a lot of major players pull off of the show floor, will people who are not actually in LA feel any difference this year between the kind of newsfeed dump that we got past years? Because people are going to be coming back from E3 saying, the show floor was kind of dead and so on. But will we feel it at all, or will it be the same kind of cadence? Because that's a huge difference.
I think we'll feel it a little bit, but I think you're right. I think anyone who's not there isn't going to feel it the same as anyone who is there. Really curious to see where E3 goes from here. The other thing I'm super curious about is exactly what Nintendo's coverage is going to be.
Well, we know what it's going to be.
Well, we know it's going to be Zelda heavy.
No, they put their schedule out for the Treehouse Live stuff. Yeah.
There you go. I didn't know that.
They put out the schedule.
So, okay, never mind then. Scratch that. I'm going to take that right out of the recording.
Huh.
It'll be like I never said it. Let's move on to what you've been playing.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Kevin, you go first. You're our guest. You go first.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about some awesome video games that are going to make us super happy. So, okay, this is partially an addendum.
Yep. I love amendums.
You guys are the writers. So the Greg and I talked a little bit about the Dreamcast for about 3.5 hours the other night.
Just a little bit.
So for some reason, I had it under the impression that Hydro Thunder was a game that would not hold up today, because we ended up talking about some like arcade racers and what's going to hold up in 2016. That's kind of the whole point of the series. And yes, you know what? San Francisco Rush 2049 does not hold up. The game does not play well. It is really not a lot of fun today. Hydro Thunder, I've played for about 2.5 hours over the last 2 days, and it's an absolute blast. It kicks ass. The progression for unlocking levels and new boats is perfect. It is very much like unlock all the easy, then unlock all the medium, unlock all the hard. You unlock the vehicles as you go along, and it is an absolute. I would say it's an absolute blast.
CJ was here, he would rake you over the coals.
It is a fantastic game, and it's a lot of fun. The music and the environments are outstanding, and there's still tons of secret paths that you can find. So as someone that hasn't played that game in like 10 years, it's a brand new game to me, and it's way better than what we got on the Xbox Live version.
Not the best in general, not that game in particular, but like a game that you really, well, I don't know if you loved it a lot.
I just played it in the arcade. I never bought it on the Dreamcast.
Yeah, I played it a lot on the Dreamcast as well, but I love jumping back into old games that I'm like super familiar with, but it's been so long that I've forgotten like the details, especially of the levels. So you get to kind of experience them again, even though you're really familiar with them. I love that personally.
Yeah.
A good racing game that has that in spades, right? Especially a game like that where it has all the various paths and.
Yeah. So along with that, I mean, I think Greg and I have been both playing a lot of Dreamcast stuff, but I recently repurchased a Dreamcast for this series. I may have repurchased 4 Dreamcasts and 36 VMUs. 36 brand new VMUs. Amazing. You can get those on eBay today. But it's for a good cause that we'll talk about at the end of the episode.
We'll talk about that later.
Stick around for that. But I've been booting up some old games, playing some stuff like NFL Blitz 2000 that we were talking about a couple seconds ago. Again, still an absolute blast to play,
So good.
and it totally kicks ass. And that's what is become apparent as I've been talking. And Ethan, I'm definitely going to talk to you after we record or later via email. But talking to more and more people about the Dreamcast, whether it be like you, Greg, or JJ, or even I'm going to be talking to like Ryan Payton about like Shenmue 2, like. Everyone that talks about the Dreamcast, it immediately puts a smile on your face. And it's a special console like that. I believe even more so than many other consoles, because not only did it have great multiplayer games, like whether it be fighting games or whether it be these arcade games that were ported perfectly to the Dreamcast, but there was also a lot of single-player games like Ethan, we were talking about Shenmue. Like those are great experiences that were really unique for the time and for the console.
Oh yeah, and you think about also the support that Capcom gave those guys,
Unbelievable.
right? Getting all the Street Fighter 3s, first on that platform, Resident Evil Code Veronica, Power Stone.
Yep.
You look at the earlier support from Namco, and Soul Calibur still being one of the best fighting games ever made. Actually, I have. Yeah, I loved the Dreamcast so much when I played it at an import store before it came out in the States that I ended up spending $700 to get the machine one controller,
Yep.
Virtua Fighter 3 TB, and
say
Power
Godzilla.
Stone and Sonic Adventure, right?
Okay.
Bought it all over again when the domestic one came out, and then I've since many years later moved into a very small condo, so I went through what is now retrospectively a very painful culling of stuff. And one of the things that I sold off was my Dreamcast, and this was something amazing. Always be nice to the executive assistant at a company, because I got to know the executive assistant at Sega very well, and so she knew I loved games. And so when we had to move offices, she opened up the warehouse and said, "Hey, here are a bunch of brand new inbox Dreamcasts and brand new inbox games. Why don't
I
you
told
take
you about that, Greg, right?
Why don't you take one of the brand new boxes and, just one copy of each of the games?" And so I walked out with like 45 brand new games. Now, some of it was things like Kiss and, heavy metal and
TNN, Off-Road.
Razor or Grinch from Konami, but like it was super cool to just be able to play those things. And I love that machine, and it is now set up on my main television with S-Video and an extension cord, and my kids love playing Ready to Rumble with me or Power Stone, and it is an amazing system. And I don't just say that as somebody who used to work there. It is just literally one of my favorite machines ever.
Well, and I think this is something that we've been talking about in the series, and if you do want to hear more about this, like Back in My Play is the next. I'm doing a summer of Dreamcast coverage, which includes.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, it's going to be literally nonstop Dreamcast all summer, which includes Greg and I are playing through Shenmue 2 for the first time, and talking about that, and again, it's me interviewing all these people that were either in the industry or just have memories, and I kind of see them popping up, or even people that worked at Sega, or people that developed games that were pivotal for, I wouldn't say the Dreamcast's success, but definitely the feel and the memories of the Dreamcast. So it's been cool, and it's why I'm kind of obsessive where I don't just buy one Dreamcast. I decided to buy 4 because I want to paint one. I want to mess around with a bunch of mod stuff that I've been checking out, and you can still buy plenty of new stuff. You can buy plenty of what? Chill out, Greg.
You have very similar personalities.
It's a summer of Dreamcast, all right? So
it is the summer of Dreamcast.
Not only are we going to be covering games, or I should say, not only can you get you can still buy lots of brand new games sealed for cheap, like $10, $15, good games like Space Channel 5, and of course sports games like NFL Blitz I bought brand new for $20, and I bought 3 12-packs of VMUs for $50 a piece. So you can still buy all that stuff if you really want it, but those aren't all going to be for me, like we mentioned before. Anyways, yeah, Dreamcast is badass, and it's still a lot of fun, and you can still get converters, so you can go from VGA to HDMI to hook it up to current TV, so you can still not even have to go through VGA anymore. It's totally
really
worth doing. It looks super good, and everything runs at 60, almost.
And if you want to listen to more podcasts about Shenmue and the Dreamcast, tune into Back in My Play throughout the whole summer.
It's going to be lots of it. Sorry, anything else before I move on?
Oh, just one little bit of useless trivia, but it was kind of fun. In our old Townsend office, right near Toyota-san's office, was a poster, an inspirational poster from SOJ that was framed in our building. That was from the Dreamcast era, and the phrase in Japanese was "innovation over everything."
Love it.
Did you work there while Shinobu Toyota still worked there while you were there?
Was walking in and out. He was there once every couple months. He had his own office. He had a big Bride of Frankenstein poster on his wall. He was a very nice guy.
I was just that's all I was going to say is he's a extremely nice guy. I've never met him in person, but actually when I worked on the Sega Mega Drive Collected Works, I was assigned to interview him on the phone, and what I thought was going to be like a 10-minute interview was over an hour-long conversation. I mean, he's just extremely forward and helpful and nice. And then the best part was I actually told him about Generation 16 and asked, can I pick your brain once in a while? Anytime. Just give me a call.
But totally do you think that was I've kind of seen it as the openness of Sega versus the closed offness of Nintendo, where it seems like, even when I talked with Tom Klinsky, you could tell in his voice, he still loves talking about this stuff, and they're super proud of what they did with the Sega Genesis and Sega in the 90s.
They well, and I will say also, I'll be the fiercest defender of what they've done. In the time after that too. The time that I was personally proudest of was, when we were doing these absolutely, above the curve games on XBLA and PSN. Like. Renegade Ops and Afterburner Climax and Sonic, the Hedgehog 4 and The Cave and Hell Yeah, and we were just doing all of these totally new things. The company has always wanted to do things that just really kind of truly delight. But the thing that always worked really well for me at the company was, when I'd go to Japan, I'd talk to the guys and they'd bring up obscure games like Mach-N X, right?
Mm.
And I'd be able to say, oh yeah, I loved that game when it came out, and they loved being recognized for these old games, and know that people do love those things.
Good. I mean,
Nice.
they deserve it. It's again, I think Greg and I will debate this over and over, but I do think it's Sega's best console by far. The ratio of quality games on that thing is just like, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Right, and you just, how many times do they just have games that just blow your mind with, like, I can't believe they even tried
unique,
Sonic Amigo or Seaman,
Yeah, absolutely.
Piping of the Dead.
Let's move
Moving
on.
on,
I love
sorry.
sitting here talking about Dreamcast. Trust
Yeah.
me, I love it. But we
I'll
gotta
be
move
quick on these last couple. I picked up Odin Sphere on the Vita. Huge fan of Muramasa on the PlayStation Vita. It plays incredibly well in that on the small screen and on the go. And I've been waiting a long time to play through Odin Sphere. It was not only it was obviously a PS2 launch game, or no, excuse me, not launch game. It was a PS2 game. It was a late game of the PS2, but they did a great job porting it over to the Vita. It plays absolutely great. It has stunning art. I never played through it on the PS2, so I'm getting this all stuff fresh. Gorgeous game, super smooth animation, and it's really fun and addictive in terms of the combat, and it's as deep as you want it to be. Like you can hack and slash, but they give you a bunch of simple moves that make you do incredibly badass stuff that is very enjoying and very satisfying when you pull off big 20 and 30 chain combos and you're juggling guys up in the air and you're going back and forth. And really, all I can say about that game is, beautiful art, beautiful music, and if you liked Muramasa or even the other game, Dragon's Crown, I think you're really gonna love this. And it's just it's just a really fantastic game, and I'm really enjoying it. So thank you for bringing that to the Vita, Atlas.
Those guys are amazing, and the people who are listening can't see this, but I just pulled Muramasa out of my PlayStation TV, which is right next to me.
Mm-hmm.
Right, it's like those are just the games you keep in your system long term.
Yes, sir. I mean, those are games are probably going to be hard to find in a couple years too. So buy Muramasa if you need to right now. And also, like I mentioned before, it's been a real crap day. So it made me crack open my copy of where is it? It's over here. I keep forgetting what this game is called. Kirby Planet RoboCop.
Oh yeah.
And
I don't think it's actually called that, but yeah.
No, I think they got the license. They got the license from RoboCop from whatever that, I forget that company that used to make all those weird '80s movies, but
Carolco.
Yeah, whatever. So it is basically Kirby Triple Deluxe 2, which is totally okay. Triple Deluxe is one of my favorite games on the 3DS, and the immediate first screen, it just oozes joy and love and fun. It's not very difficult. I played through the first couple worlds, but it looks really good. They did add some new mechanics in terms of the camera, and it is still very much Triple Deluxe. So if you are a fan of Kirby and you have a 3DS, grab this game. Even the robot stuff is pretty cool. It's more of a mech, I guess you would call it, than RoboCop's suit armor. But I like to think of it that way, in delivering justice as Murphy. But it's a great game, and I really recommend picking it up just because, again, it's Kirby Triple X 2, and this has been a year of lackluster Nintendo releases and half-ass stuff. I don't want to say half-ass. Yeah, half-ass stuff, because they're holding down the charge shot. They're holding down the charge shot for the NX, which I've repeated many times. But this is one of the few games outside of the Hyrule Warriors on 3DS and all the other Star Fox, which are very much mediocre releases. This is a fantastic game, and it deserves to be recognized and not lost in the summer shuffle.
So with the RoboCop DNA, is it more like RoboCop 3 or Michael Keaton RoboCop?
It's very much, it's like a better RoboCop 3 because, it's for kids. It's RoboCop for kids.
Did you say Michael Keaton RoboCop?
Yeah, the new RoboCop.
I had no idea.
There's a new. He's the bad guy. Spoiler.
Oh right, okay. Yeah.
But it's a great game, and the last thing I'll just say super quick. I've been playing Dragon Quest Heroes 2 on the PlayStation Vita. I imported that from Japan, and it has load times that oh my god, load times that are just absolutely unbelievably long, like literally like minute plus long, and it like goes in the tutorial, like it's taking you from scene to scene to scene to teach you all the new mechanics, and it's like, all right, well, I'm going to be here for like 2 minutes, load for a minute, here for 2 minutes, load for a minute, and it's something that as soon as Odin Sphere came, I popped it out and I put Odin Sphere back in, and I haven't touched it since then. But the stuff that I did play, I will say it runs really well on the PlayStation Vita once it does do all that loading. It looks really good. It runs really well, and the cutscenes are beautiful. So I hope this ends up coming to the States here. It's probably not going to come out in the Vita physically here, but that's why I imported it. And it's worth checking out if you like the first Dragon Quest Heroes games, you like Dragon Quest music, and lots of button mashing Musou stuff. It's worth a look.
All right. But look, Ethan's actually filling in more games on his what you've been playing as you're talking.
Yep, because he brought up the Vita, and that reminded me that I actually had spent a good amount of time on 2 Vita games. Which can I roll into
Vita,
that?
the 2016 Dreamcast.
Okay. Yeah, no, I love the Vita. And so I have become re-obsessed with Runner 2, which, I just can't stop playing. I love the way that the action platforming ties to the musical cues. And I haven't been so fixated on perfecting stages since Velocity 2X. I just love that game. So if you haven't played Runner 2, it is a perfect platform for it. It's a perfect on-the-go game because the stages are like 2 minutes long, and it's just a blast to play. The other one that I've been playing on Vita is Severed. I finally picked that one up, and I
gotta grab that eventually.
Yeah. Oh, Severed. Is really cool. It's one of these very, very rare times in which you start playing a game and you say to yourself, I haven't played something like this before, right? I mean, everything seems to be a kind of derivation of another game, but you simply can't use a cross pitch to describe Severed effectively. It's part dungeon crawler, but its dungeon crawler mechanics feels very different than what you've seen in prior dungeon crawler games. It has slicing mechanics that you could almost say is like Infinity Blade, but it's done in a much more stylized and clever way. And so, outside of the problem of getting stuck more often than I would like, I've had to go to YouTube a couple of times to solve some puzzles. It's just an experience unlike any other. And while I don't think it's as good as something like Guacamelee, it's definitely an interesting game that you should check out if you're a Vita completionist.
I just want to check it out because of who makes it, personally.
Oh yeah. I mean, Drinkbox are great. They're clever guys. So the big game of the week for me was Mirror's Edge Catalyst. And yes, you're holding it up. That's very good. I got it on Xbox One. I actually started playing, convinced to spend the $5 to do a month of EA Access. And that was really fantastic because I was able to play the first 2 hours of the game, and the game was then fully loaded, so when I bought the disc it just booted right in. But I'm so glad to see that series come back, and it has a lot of the same problems as the original, but it has so many of the high points as well. And now that it's open world, and you're a courier, right? Now you have a lot more kind of Assassin's Creed type levels where side missions where you're trying to do things that are just exploring the city and getting from point A to point B as quickly as you can, that really adds a lot to the kind of overall feeling of depth of the game. The one minor complaint I'd have about the game is that it uses this kind of red trace that you have to follow in order to be able to get from point A to point B efficiently. And because the look of the world is so uniform and the signposting is not particularly good, you know how so many games will gear you towards the right direction to go through, like, lighting cues or like the color of a door, that type of thing.
Like Uncharted and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
This, if you do not have that guide on, you're gonna get lost, or you're gonna find yourself in a dead end, and it's just frustrating. So
That's too bad.
It is too bad, because you end up spending more time than you'd like looking at that red line than really kind of exploring this beautiful world. But I like the character. I like that feeling of nailing a rapid series of swings and evasions and jumps and moving from one skyscraper to another. It still has a look that's unlike any other, and I think it's still the best first-person action platform experience you can find on any platform. And again, it's a miracle that it came out. I mean, we got 3 dead spaces, we got no mirror's edges, and this thing doesn't have any of the standard, like, DLC or microtransaction tropes. It feels like a labor of love from DICE. That it was like someone at DICE wanted to make this, and EA did them a favor, and of course, by extension, did all of us a favor too.
So now, I didn't really play the first game, but I've always heard that the combat was kind of rough.
Yep, and the
How is
combat's
that?
rough here too. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
the one thing I'll say is now you have this ability to kind of burst past, and so the idea more is to kind of knock people out quickly and move on, to evade, dodge, and escape, as opposed to take people head on. And critically, they've taken gunplay out. So Faith cannot
cool.
pick up a gun, which is good, because when you're in first person, you have a gun, you expect a certain level of fidelity and
Right.
accuracy, and then you want to rely on that because you're so used to playing games that way. So
And that's not what the first game offered.
that's right, and
I've
that's
heard.
not what it was about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, this one, it's also a really good place to start. What surprised me is that it feels very much like a reboot instead of a sequel. So it's almost like a Zelda game, where a Zelda game tells the same story every single time, right? Same character protagonist's name is Link, right? This is Faith again, but it's just starting over. So it's actually a really good place to start if you haven't played the series before. And again, in a world that still is so full of these kind of dingy, grimy, gunmetal gray, hardcore battle shooters, this pristine, white, beautiful world that allows you to, run along it like a massive jungle gym feels so fresh and new that it's worth doing.
Nice. Okay. Cool. I'm glad I have a copy that I may play someday. Let's talk about your VR experience. We're not allowed to talk about the porn, though.
So here's the interesting thing with that. I'm gonna use an analogy that I hope will carry. Back when I was working in that Townsend office in San Francisco at Sega, I would go downstairs to the cafe, and there was a guy that was working at the cafe. He was the owner of the place.
Called him Crazy Joe.
Well, no, he was a really nice guy, but he was obsessed with his N-Gage phone, right?
What?
And
Who wasn't?
This,
Side talk.
but this is the thing, is like he would, like, as just a matter of pure enthusiasm, keep trying to convince me and anyone else who would listen that this was the thing you had to have, and you can play Sonic on it, and you
Splinter
can
Cell.
Right, and Elder Scrolls is coming to it and all that.
Yep.
And the thing is the guy like really was blown away, and to his credit, I mean, it was smarter, gameplay than what a flip phone would be, and it kind
Sure.
of did, fit this weird middle space between flip phone and real smartphone. So he was kind of ahead of the curve, and he loved talking about it. But the problem is none of us really cared because we didn't have access to it, and so our interest level was low. The reason I'm bringing that up is I'm cautious about talking too much about these things because I'm going to feel like I run the risk of being that same guy. You know what I mean? Where
Oh, don't worry, Ethan. You are that same guy to us.
So the problem is, just as I didn't have access to an Engage, so I didn't really care that much about hearing about it, here the challenge remains that you need to have a Samsung 5 phone or better to be able to access the Gear VR stuff. Okay, so it's very limited. Within the next 6 months to a year, this is going to be a much broader conversation because everyone will have had a chance to play things like the PlayStation VR, and and presumably Apple will have something that's out.
The Vive.
Right. Well, the thing is, though, is like even stuff like the Vive and the Oculus, which are great, like they're hard to get if you can afford them, and most people can't afford them because it also requires, for most people, a hardware upgrade. So I was talking to Greg Ford, and he has never played VR before, right? So if you're in the industry, you've tried it out, that type of thing. But this was the first time I've actually had it in the home, right?
Okay.
And holy shit. I mean, it's like it just blew me away. I mean, it did. It's like there's one thing to go to a show and like for 3 seconds look at something, but like when you're actually spending time with it, it was the kind of this is next gen experience that I haven't felt since the Xbox 360 launched.
Did you get to play real video games on it?
Yes, I did. So, and to be fair, there's a mix of different things. So, I would highlight 4 games to really kind of describe, right? The first that everyone wants to play is the Eve Gunjack game, right? Which is not Eve Valkyrie. This is kind of a stripped down thing. It's a shallow game, but it really is immersive, and it proves just how accurate and satisfying the feeling of aiming with your head is if you're on rails, right? It's really, really precise, and you feel like you are Luke Skywalker, in the cockpit, like helping, knock out spaceships. Again, it's totally on rails, and it's like a big Dave and Buster's arcade machine, and it won't keep you going for hours on end, but it's impressive. The other one that is, I think, kind of an interesting one to talk about from a gameplay perspective is Minecraft, actually. So the Gear VR has Minecraft, and so you can play that now in a full 3D world where you are in that space. And what was interesting to me was that my response to it was very powerful. It is a fundamentally different thing to actually be in this world that you're building and creating. But at the same time, it was interesting that my daughter, who's 9, who loves Minecraft and plays it all the time on her MacBook, looked at it, was totally competent with the controls, thought it was neat, it went right back to her MacBook, right? So, it'll be interesting. I kind of get into evangelist mode when I get excited about something, so bear in mind, my feelings about all of this may be a little bit different 2 weeks from now. We'll have to see. But
did you get to play? Did they have a version of Telltale Boxer?
I didn't see that, but that would be interesting.
I came so close to buying a version.
Oh man, I was hoping I could get Telltale Boxer and Mario Clash, and then I would have been sold.
Well, so the thing is there's another game that was a tower defense game that was called Evil Robot Traffic Jam that just came out, and it's the game above the others that felt less like kind of a arcade game gimmick, and it's like, oh, this is actually a very satisfying tower defense game, and the 3D effect is pretty spectacular, and I could see myself playing this for a much more extended period of time. So that is there. And then the last one to mention is one that is called, and I'm looking, Affected the Manor, which, as just a proof of concept of how immersive these games can be, it takes you into a haunted house, and it's there are no game mechanics other than walking through the house. So it's kind of the equivalent of like a haunted house that you go visit during Halloween time. But it's so convincing as you're walking around. If you're standing up and you are using the controller, and this supports a Bluetooth controller that's just like a Xbox One controller. to just move around and then look behind you, look ahead at your own pace, you are transported into a new place that is utterly convincing. And it had jump scares that made me wake up my wife, unfortunately, by my own girly screams. But I mean, it's it's just, you play these things and you get so enveloped that you are transported to a new place. And the last kind of evangelical thing I'm going to throw out there is that I used to, when I was in college, go to movies 3-4 times a week. Right, that was my thing. That was my church, so to speak. Okay, I was a film major and I just loved going to movies. And one of the things that I've also loved about this device is that it has a setup where when you're watching a film, it actually seats you in a movie theater. Right.
That's cool.
And the seats are all beautifully rendered, and the eye becomes totally convinced that you were looking at a big screen. So it's like it's a trip to the movie theater to see whatever you want anytime you want. And that combined with the games means that in my circumstance, where I have a very small house with 4 people, I finally have a man room. I have a portable man room, right, that allows me, like in short bursts or enough to watch a movie, space that is completely mine. And provided I just say, Dad's taken 25, 30 minutes to be somewhere else.
Jesus Christ.
Somewhere other than the bathroom where Dad hides out for 25 to 30 minutes.
Dad time.
Yeah, it's really quite nice, and so it's actually got me thinking this is going to be particularly popular in places like Japan, where there's no space, there's no privacy, but if you want a little personal space, this kind of gives it to you.
God, in Japan it's going to be huge. Think of all the anime that they can watch on their portable. I don't know. Well, I think my thing is I like the excitement and enthusiasm about all this stuff. When you're talking about that, it sounds like tech demo-y stuff, which is still like my concern. When I want to see, I mean, I think Sony's going to have the best shot at this right now, is seeing video games, where those seem like demos or very small bite-sized things. I want to see a reason why I really want to throw this on, because I have a 65-inch 4K TV that I sit like 3 feet from. But if it allows me to experience something different in games and not Minecraft and not like a tower defense, but I think it would be in like a Mirror's Edge kind of situation. Like that would be really, really rad.
I am really, I agree with you. I'm interested in the games, and I mean, when I worked at Frontier, which was 2 years ago now, I was playing Elite using the Oculus. So I mean, and it was incredible. And those are the kind of games that I'm kind of, those and racing games, anything where you're seated in the cockpit of something, I'm kind of interested in. But I'm also like what Ethan's talking about with not so much movies, although I do want to experience that because I'm interested to see what that's like. But I really desperately want to experience some kind of sports broadcast.
Yeah, like the stuff that they've shown with Oculus, where they can actually throw a 3D camera in the front row of a sporting event, and then you can just look side to side and actually feel like you're sitting there. That would be huge. But I think for that stuff, like it's all going to come down to price point. Like you see what they charge for like NHL TV and NFL TV. Like what would they charge for a 3D version of that, or a 360-degree version of that?
Although I think what you'll see first off is actually like one-offs. It'll be like pay-per-views. And I know they already did that. I'm pretty sure they did that for the Daytona 500 this year, and I'm guessing that's what you're going to see is more like very specific instances of it, more than just sort of a season pass.
Well, and so a couple of things there. I mean, first of all, I think that this is in no way a replacement for a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One, right?
No.
The vast majority of games I am still going to want to play on a flat screen. It's important to be able to have that disconnect, to be able to feel like you have a full level of control, especially anything, of course, that's third person, right? So,
Although I've heard that the PSVR, the whole using the VR helmet for even regular games is pretty impressive.
Oh, sure. No, I can see that, and as a proxy for just emulating a big screen TV, that's fine. But what I'm just saying is, it's not that these fully 360-degree immersive games are going to, make 2D games a thing of the past.
Right.
In no way will that happen. The other thing is, again, I was surprised by just how light and accessible this thing is, and one of the things I've loved about this is I can just throw it in my bag, show it to friends, take it over to a neighbor's house, and you do, if you love games, become a bit evangelical and want to show this stuff, right? Because it's exciting. But the challenge is with the PSVR and with the Oculus, you're going to be anchored to one room, doing this, and you're not going to want to move your machine. And I wonder, it's been said that this year the vast majority of people who are going to be experiencing VR are actually going to be doing it through mobile. And when you look at Google's Daydream platform, right, which is pretty sophisticated, is being designed for higher spec and gives you a controller that's designed to interact in 3D in first person, I think it might be that while the PC stuff is always going to be best, and Vive I've heard is actually the best of all.
Yeah.
Those things are going to be inaccessible to people for years, but a lot of people are going to have a good experience with mobile. Because I was always afraid that the mobile version of VR just would be so far behind that it just wouldn't immerse or satisfy. But even Steve Wozniak actually was quoted recently as saying playing Gear VR made him cry because it just felt so real. Now, again, that's a hyperbolic statement, but you will be blown away if you've never played it to have an evening messing around with some of these tech demos, because the games themselves may not be that deep, but the promise of what they can become will excite you tremendously.
Yeah, I guess I'm willing to wait, and then again, maybe Sony is going to show us some really great stuff tomorrow night. But I think with the word hyperbole is something, or hyperbolic is something that is my impression of a lot of people when they talk about this stuff. And Steve Wozniak, brilliant guy. I actually love him. Great book too. Go read it. But man, that guy is lots of hyperbole. Whenever he talks about stuff, like the guy carries around 3 Game Boy Pockets and Tetris. He goes all out when he talks about stuff and when he does stuff. So I don't know, but again, I think Sony is going to be the best shot for consumer VR for this generation, and hopefully they can just get that box. And that's another thing that I've been hearing people talk about is the box that you're going to need for PlayStation VR is kind of maybe just powerful enough, and it might actually not be very powerful. So that might be concerning. It all depends on what we see tomorrow.
Yeah. Anything else you got there, Ethan?
Nope, that's been dominating most of my time. I'll just mention top line. I picked up happily Devil May Cry for Xbox One, and again, it just shows that the difference between Xbox 360 and Xbox One isn't dramatic. It looks significantly better, and I know it's just a remaster, but I mean, it looks as good as most of the games built from the ground up on Xbox One look.
I can't. By the way, you've said that a few times in the past couple of weeks, and I got to say I don't agree with you on that. But I don't think the leap was as big as from like Xbox to 360. But
looking forward to Horizon 2
I
on
will
Xbox.
never confuse an Xbox 360 game with an Xbox One game. But still, DMC is supposed to be really good. Yeah. I have the only new thing I've been playing this week is Overwatch, which I'm not really gonna talk about here because CJ's not here, and that was kind of the point. So, but that is something that was actually bought with Patreon dollars.
Nice.
So yeah, thank you for that, anyone who is one of our patrons. And CJ sort of threw it into the box with these new microphones that were also paid for through Patreon dollars. So here you go. This is your donations at work. These microphones that you'll notice. Well, not Kevin. Kevin bought it on his own, but these microphones you'll notice. Yeah, that we're all using. That is why, and hopefully you'll notice the difference in sound quality in the show. I think you will. Let's move on to tweets.
I got some tweets too. If you don't have, like, people sent me a bunch of stuff right when we started putting out the show.
Okay. So let's jump right in. There's a lot of E3 tweets here. We'll just stick with that stuff that was sent very recently. Hacker alias Sean Nola. Do you think the NX could actually be a streaming service that can stream to multiple proprietary devices?
Hell no.
Nope.
Now Nintendo is going to want full control over all that. So what I do, I mean, I think we could put together a wish list of what we want with that X, which maybe some really good virtual console support and subscription offerings for that kind of stuff, which would be great because again, one of the big failings of the Wii U has just been a terrible, terrible offering in support for the virtual console. Something that they like to tout whenever they put out one game, but then they just completely forget about it. A couple weeks later. I mean, props to Microsoft for how much they've constantly updated backwards compatibility on that thing. So there are just a ton of Xbox 360 games on that thing that are backwards compatible.
And
well,
Sony.
and also though, and I know we talked about it a couple weeks ago, but the fact that Microsoft has really made a big deal out of like, hey, you buy Just Cause 3, we're giving you Just Cause 2 for free. Yeah. We're giving you Alan Wake for free if you buy Quantum Break. That is just so cool.
That is the way it needs to be. If we're going to go into this digital future, you know what? After a while, those games just aren't worth anything.
Nope. GD-ROM's worth a lot, though.
And they're free to give away. So...
Yep.
Hacker Alias, Last Place 09. I have one game budget in October. Should I get Titanfall 2 or Battlefield 1? And why?
Well, I mean, just from what I saw today, this is going to be completely based on like what kind of game you like to play, and more importantly, like your friends. I think because those are games that you're going to want to play with friends. So first, that would make that priority number one. But I thought both looked absolutely fantastic. Titanfall is a little bit up my alley in terms of just like crazy balls to the walls action and fun, and you have a lot of different options and ways that you can play that game. You can be very mech heavy. There's a bunch of new classes in the game as well, I believe. So I think that gives you maybe a little bit more of a casual look at things, where Battlefield like tends to draw a more hardcore audience, I believe. Mm-hmm. So I personally would probably go Titanfall 2.
Yeah, I'd say the same in that I, as a general rule, when I buy a Call of Duty, I'll finish the campaign, spend 2 hours playing multiplayer, and say, yep, I've tried it, and then I return it to GameStop. Whereas Titanfall, it's the only multiplayer game I can think of that I deeply enjoyed, and I could not get enough of it. And the reason is because I'm not a particularly competent first-person shooter in a competitive space, but that game made me feel powerful.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. That's a badass game. Like when I played it on Xbox One, like I played it for like almost a whole weekend, then just never played it again because everyone kind of moved on from Titanfall when I picked it up.
I'm just gonna say Battlefield to be the odd man out.
You would.
I love that. I seriously though, I love that they're creating something around World War I.
I think that's cool.
I think it's going to be fascinating. I think, honestly, I don't know how legit this is or not, but I think that even the discussion around that game has sort of opened some people's eyes to, because I mean that conflict was 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. So open people's eyes sort of to that history, because I don't think people realize that if you're interested in history at all, you should. Learn a little bit about the World War I, because it's fascinating when you really look at it from a military standpoint and from a weapons standpoint. It's fascinating because when that war started, there were still people riding into battle on horses. Mm-hmm. I mean, the technology was insane. The how rapidly the technology advanced during that war was insane.
The other thing, let's be honest, between Wolfenstein and the Indiana Jones movies, like Nazis have become kind of almost cartoon-like.
Absolutely, yeah, they are.
So this I think will make the enemies seem a bit more frightening because they're less known.
Also, we'll throw out there Dan Carlin's podcast, Hardcore History. Check it out.
Absolutely, yeah.
He did a great series. It's like 16 hours long about World War I, and it's fascinating. Like it's hard to put down.
Well, it's the forgotten war, and it was in some ways much more brutal. And
not in some ways, it was much more brutal.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why it will be fascinating to see how they portray the brutality of World War I in that game. So that they didn't show any single player stuff today, but hopefully we'll see some of that soon.
I just remember when they first showed that, there was the image there of the soldier wielding a mace, and I even said like, wow, that's interesting, and I hadn't really thought about it. And then somebody actually tweeted a picture to me of various trench maces, and it's like, wow, that was yeah. Hacker Alias, Legend of Starfy. What would it take to make anybody on the panel interested in esports?
Nothing.
I'm so
No
turned off
chance?
by esports, like the
Really?
esports commentary, the stuff that they did on EA today. It's just like I don't think it's for our generation. I think it's for the generation that's shit. And guys, I'm 30. You guys are older than me, and I don't think it's my generation. Like I can't stand listening to that stuff.
Well, and then the other thing, and maybe this is an unfair concern, but when you're talking about professional athletes, like somebody in the NFL, these guys are very, very well paid, and they've conditioned themselves for years to get into the position to do this. I have no doubt that it can be very exciting to watch highly skilled gamers do something that other people can't do. But my concern is, frankly, now that big gambling money is going into it, like if you're a 26-year-old kid and you can throw a game and actually, are guaranteed money as opposed to having a shot at money, I think that it's going to be something that's quite possibly corrupted quite easily.
All sports are, though. I mean, that's college basketball, that's college football, that's poker championships. Like people can be corrupted when money's involved for any kind of competition.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I guess also I just I look at video games principally as a storytelling medium. I like products that are a beginning, middle, and an end. Whether it's very light on story like a Mario, or very deep on something like a Traveler's Tales, or Telltale games. So watching League of Legends is just not interesting to me. I'm not saying there's not a huge market for it. Clearly there is. I'm not it.
Yep, fair enough. I think that's it. I think it is something that's not necessarily of our generation. But that being said, the sheer number of people who will sit on Twitch and watch people play video games is ridiculous. So I'm sure that it's going to be a big thing. I'm kind of interested, actually, and the fact that you're hearing things like Madden. I mean, I like sports. I like to watch sports, and that's kind of the reason is the drama. It's sort of the real. I love that anything can happen. And you're watching very highly skilled people do amazing things, and you're there, you're in it with them. I will definitely watch, but I think what you said, Kevin, is kind of going to be my thing. Is that I'm more interested in seeing it presented in a more professional way.
Well, it's also
than what I've seen in the past.
It'll be driven by the personalities of the athletes as well,
right.
Because that's where the drama really comes in. And if you don't know who the athletes are, or if you just think they're assholes,
if they're not likable.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
If they just look like punks, that are esports, crazy dudes that are drinking Jolt Cola and wearing jean shorts.
Have major respect for people drinking Jolt Cola.
It's the drink of the hackers. It's a part of the hacker revolution. It's what all the hackers drink. So I don't know. You know what I mean. Like, I think if they want to make esports more mainstream, it's always going to be about the reality story that they can tell, like the reality TV stories that they can put behind these people, and it's why professional wrestling is at its best is when they have really good montages that tell the backstories of why these two people are fighting. And if they can do that with esports, I think it will bring in more people.
But hopefully they're not complete douchebags.
Well, and here's the other thing also is I think we as our market has expanded, and it has quite a bit. We used to be in a position where we could say, we were experts about video games, right? And because video games were pretty much catering to, a fairly narrow band of people, we could know about everything about video games and kind of be fans of everything, right? But now it's getting so broad that I think I agree with Kevin that, you have a totally different generation that is obsessed with League of Legends and Minecraft, and they love these deep games. And you have another group, oftentimes actually people in their 50s and older, that love the mobile games that are kind of more gambling than actual video games, but they like that. That's their thing. And we're the ones that are of a certain generation that love podcasts, that love professional blogs like Kotaku and Polygon and stuff like that. These are very different audiences that like very different types of games.
Like if you go back, and one of my favorite shows growing up in the 90s was Video Power, and that was Johnny Arcade hosting, where kids would get together and they would compete in NES games, and the winner is like Nick Arcade was kind of the future version of that, where people would compete in arcade games, or NES games, and then at the end you get to run around a crazy obstacle like maze, and then put a bunch of video games on your Velcro body. And it was my most loved show, and that was basically esports, but it was cooler back then because it was NES and Sega Genesis games, and maybe you would get a TurboGrafx 16 if you found it in the maze.
Yeah, but I wonder what that like. Are you any more interested in watching Twitch when they're covering either classic games or current games that you're playing? Like if there was a Kirby Twitch stream, which there probably is, would you watch that or not?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, it depends. Like I watch some of the speedrun stuff, but I think I more just like watching people play video games normally, and not like wearing advertisements and pumping out, like, I don't know.
All
Check
right.
it out.
Kevin, you said you had some tweets. I'm gonna let you do one. Pick one.
Oh, great! Because now I didn't have the thing open. Let's see. This is
Wow.
Okay, this is from. Never mind. I don't have any tweets.
Okay, well, we're going to do one more here then. This comes from Hacker Alias Generic Interweb. Has E3 changed? And if so, how much since you guys were going 100 years ago? I think this has more to do with Ethan and me, but I don't know. You've been to E3 a couple times, right, Kevin?
I went to, as part of Game Trailers coverage, right. I went to the Rock Band party and got to see the Who private concert for the Rock Band 2 event. That's it.
Nice.
Otherwise, I was sleeping under my desk and posting videos for GameTrailers.com.
Okay, so Ethan.
Yeah, I mean, I went through an interesting transition where, I remember when I was starting an editorial, Phil actually was talking about E3 before I'd ever gone to it as this kind of video game wonderland. And the first day you're there for the first time ever, it really is that. It's this kind of incredible thing. And you're very busy when you're a journalist. We had a bit of a break because we were print journalists, so, we didn't have to have stories running that very day. But it was still fun to be able to go and get kind of privilege access to see things and not have to wait in lines. I think the worst type of E3 experience is when you're actually working booths at a publisher, because that's where you're standing in one place in the loudest place on earth, showing a game that you're probably not too psyched about yourself, right? Just over and over again, for hours on end. I remember I had 3 days where I had to show a DS game for kids, right? Which is a good game, it was something that we were proud of releasing, but not the type of thing you want to spend 3 days showing people,
Mm-hmm.
Then finally I had 1 year where I actually could just go but be, somebody with a badge that could just check out the show floor, right? And that is not as cool as you'd think because the lines are crazy. And
Amen.
You find yourself waiting for 3 hours to play Zelda Skyward Sword and say, yep.
There's very little in this world that I would wait 3 hours to play, or to do, I should say, and to play a video game that's not out yet is not one of them.
Yep.
Yeah, my experience with E3 sort of ran the gamut, because the first E3 I went to was when it was still actually in Atlanta, and I was doing website at that point, but it was our own website, so it was kind of cool because it was very we were just happy that we had passes, and the fact that there were a few companies that would give us meetings, and we that whole E3 was go to a meeting, run back to the media center, type out a story, and post it right away. And this was in like '97. Then when I started at Ziff Davis, by the time I went to my first E3 for Ziff Davis, I was at EGM, and I was the previews editor. So I didn't have experience dealing with the floor or the lines, because I was literally like my calendar for E3 was when the doors opened, I was in a meeting, and when the doors closed, I was finishing my last meeting. Like I was literally just running from meeting to meeting all the time. But I loved it. It was interesting work, and like you said, you weren't running back to the media center and trying to post stories. You were just sort of taking a lot of notes and recordings and maybe transcribing interviews and things like that. Then I got to go as a member of a developer, but it was weird because I went the year that the Robotech game that I worked on was coming out. But what was really odd about that was that it was shown behind closed doors, and I wasn't allowed in,
Ah.
which was bizarre. Like, I was so excited because, especially I've talked about it on the show before, the E3 demo was mine. I'd created it, and I wasn't allowed to see it, which really sucked. And it was just sort of lame that it wasn't on the show floor. I would have loved to have, seen people play it and react to it. And then otherwise I've gone as like just sort of a general badge. It was a weird transition though, because when you go as the press, you're the people that whole show is based on. That and buyers. If you're a buyer or a member of the press, like you're getting sort of grabbed if you walk through and a PR person sees your badge. You're getting grabbed. It's like, come here and look at this. Like,
and back in the day, especially if you were print press, right?
Absolutely, and because print was where it was at, but also all of these, especially the smaller PR or the PR people at the smaller companies, knew that space was at a premium, so they had to really impress you.
Yeah, it's interesting because just as a matter of comparison, and it makes total sense. Like, there was a year where Phil and I both got to have a one-on-one interview with Shigeru Miyamoto, right? Which was amazing, right? And Phil asked funny questions like, "What do you think about the Super Mario Brothers movie?" and things like that. But but I mean, nowadays, like, I actually know very well one of the directors of PR at Nintendo, and if I asked him, "Hey, I got a blog, I'd like to sit down with Miyamoto-san," he would very politely say, "Well, it's nice to want things."
Yeah, exactly. Aren't you cute? I mean, but as far as the show going on the floor is the same thing that Ethan said. If you have like just a general badge, I'm not crazy about that. Not because I want to be coddled or anything, but I have very low tolerance for long lines for anything, and I understand why people get really excited and they stand in line for 3 hours to play Zelda, but that's not me. Like, I can't be bothered. So I find that shows like that, nowadays, I feel like it's a waste of my time. I get much more from sitting in front of a computer and watching the press conferences and, just watching the Treehouse coverage and then just sort of trolling the different media sites and learning the news that way. That's to me, that's E3 now. I loved working it. It was great. As press, I didn't like working it as a member of the development community. But I didn't really work the way you did in that situation. It was more just I wasn't allowed anywhere near my own game.
Well, and one tradition that I always have thought sucks, and I see less of it now, thank goodness, but the whole best of E3 thing, the reason I hate that is because you're seeing these like prepackaged trailers in many cases that don't represent anything more than, like a little vertical slice or something. And it's like, so who cares, right? I remember Doom 3 was more highly rated than Half-Life 2 in 1 year, and it's like, really?
I think it's an example of the pre-order culture nowadays too, because now you get to slap that on before your game's even out. Best of E3, it doesn't mean anything, but you got it. So I mean, and how many Best of E3 stickers did you see when you walked around? I mean, there was hundreds. So
yes.
But the thing that I really did love, and I don't know if this is still a thing, and I kind of hope it is. And Guitar Hero is the greatest example of this. There was that one area, Kensha Hall, where literally the tiniest of tiny vendors were there, including I forget the name of the company that did Guitar Hero originally. But anyway.
Oh, Red Octane?
Red Octane. They were in Kensha Hall that year. They were discovered in Kensha Hall that year, and that was always kind of fun. I mean, because you go down there, especially when you were working for the magazine, it's like, there's probably nothing here I'm going to cover. But you never knew what you were going to come across, and it was almost like searching for buried treasure. It was I don't know, it was a really cool feeling. I used, when I was younger, in 97, 98, 99, I absolutely adored going to E3, but it lost its luster.
Well, it's also not fun to share a room, which fortunately later on I got my own room, but there was 1 year where I shared my room with a fellow producer who snored very loudly, and so I had to find another room, and I had to take a half room that wasn't really designed as a room. It was not good stuff. But also, people are kind of humorless about coverage of E3 stuff. I remember Dan Shu did something that I thought was quite funny, which is he very poker face said, I found the game of the show. You got to check it out, and it is Jenga on Wii. It's amazing, guys. And suddenly there was all this buzz about Jenga on Wii, which he was just joking because that was obviously such a stupid concept. But people were either angry that he had driven their attention to something that was silly, or actually believed that it was something great.
Yeah. Anyway, E3. The more it changes, the more it stays the same. We're going to got a couple announcements here just before we end the show. The major one is something that Kevin and I are actually planning, which actually, Kevin, if you want to explain it, go right ahead.
Yeah, so basically what we are going to be doing is, first off, I've been wanting to, as Greg knows, I'm a serial donator to the Extra Life charities and all the stuff that's going on, whether it be Greg or when Giant Bomb or other people that do their live streams. They're always great causes because if we can all get behind, we're very divided people these days, but we can all get behind helping sick kids and giving every kid the opportunity to get to adulthood and giving them the resources they need and the treatment and the funds that they need to make that happen. So I've been wanting to do Extra Life for a while, and I thought, hey, you know what? Maybe the best way to do that is to team up with someone that's been doing such an amazing job for such a long time. So what I'm going to do is actually fly up to Halifax and go to Greg's house, and we're going to be doing 18 hours of continuous Sega Dreamcast video game playing, and we're doing it on, we wanted to do it on September 9th. Obviously 9/9, but my parents are going to be away, so they need someone to watch their dog. So we're going to do it the week before, which is going to be September 3rd. That's going to be Labor Day weekend, and that way people can also hang out on a Saturday, and we're going to play games from what is probably going to be 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time because Greg is an hour ahead or behind me to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're going to get a couple Dreamcasts. We have a huge library of games, and we will have the final details on all this stuff. But I think it will be fun to do competitive stuff where, if Greg, beats me in a game, people are like saying, all right, well, we're going to donate $20 to Greg's charity, or, for me, it's going to be the Boston Children's Hospital here in Massachusetts. So it will be a great event for us to raise a bunch of money and to, again, celebrate the Dreamcast. But again, really, it's to raise money for sick kids and for you guys to hang out with us for a day and play some great games. I mentioned before that I bought a ton of brand new VMUs, and I think what we'll do is I think it'll be like every other hour because otherwise it's going to be a lot of shipping. Every other hour, we're going to give away a brand new sealed VMU to someone that donates to the cause, and we're going to be able to see all that stuff. So. Again, that's going to be September 3rd, so it's a couple months off, but put it on your calendars because, like I said, Greg and I are going to be going through the best of what the Dreamcast has to offer for 18 straight hours, and it's going to be an absolute Dreamcast.
Nice.
Wow.
And I just want to call out too that the Children's Hospital I support is the IWK here in Halifax, which, by the way, just had its telethon last week where we did the Extra Life Guild here in Halifax did a live stream. Was it last week or the week before? Anyway, we got to flip the check for the amount of money that was raised for the hospital through Extra Life, and it was over $58,000.
Wow, huge!
It's amazing, and over $5,000 of that was actually people who donated to my campaign, which you guys and gals, amazingly generous, and Kevin, you were a huge part of that, and thank you again for that. I mean, I couldn't believe I hit that number. And that number, that total is actually higher than the year before. I think it's gotten higher every year since the IWK has been part of it. So amazing. Well, yes, we're going to try to do it again.
And guys, again, I know a single clap sounds hollow, but sincerely, that's incredible that you guys do that. That's awesome.
Well, I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun, and like I said, it's like we've both been saying, it's the absolute best possible cause that you could want to raise money for. So, again, like Greg said, he's going to be going IWK. I'm going to be going Boston Children's Hospital. So it's going to be a friendly competition. Again, at the end of it, we're going to raise a bunch of money, and I hope to, not only the Player One audience shows up, but the Back of My Play audience shows up as well, and from the Fitcast too.
I think with with that number, and just based on Patreon and past years for Extra Life, all super generous people. So I can't wait to see how it goes.
Yeah. I'm artificially stuffing my ballot a little bit because every month I donate one episode's proceeds from the Fitcast, which is usually like $250-ish to like $300. I'm gonna preload my account with $250 from the Fitcast for September. So Greg's starting in a $250 hole, so you're gonna need
I'm
to
already
help
at
him out.
$300 on the year anyway.
Okay, well, you know what? Then we're almost even. So, yeah, again, I'm going to be calling on the Fitcast audience back in my play, and again, the Player One audience I know is going to go pro Greg, but I think I got a pretty good audience on my shows to back me up as well.
One more quick thing, just wanted to call out. I don't really have much to say about this, but just want to say sorry to hear about the loss this week of two titans in the sports world. We lost Muhammad Ali. And of course we lost Gordie Howe, which Mr. Hockey, which is terrible. But he was an amazing guy. He was tough as nails, amazing player. And of course Muhammad Ali, you don't even need to discuss what he, from a sporting perspective, from a civil rights perspective, he's Muhammad Ali. Anyway, sorry to hear about that, the loss of those two amazing men this week.
And quick aside, my first exposure to Muhammad Ali was watching Different Strokes.
Nice.
Yep.
And that's our show for this week. Thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, head on over to playeronepodcast.com. We've got our blog there on the front page where you can read about the show. You can read about Generation 16 episodes, which episode 18 is coming along. And you can check out Sega CD blog posts, which I've got one written and I just haven't posted yet. I don't know when I'm going to find the time to do it with E3 this week. But I will soon. More importantly, there you can get access to our web board where you can discuss this episode with us and our other listeners, our amazing community. It's always fun to sit there. And, of course, this week's going to be even better because there's going to be a lot of discussion there about E3. So come on over. Join up. It's a great little community. And chat with us. While you're what am I trying to say? Again, if you like what you heard, while you're there, you can actually go to the iTunes Music Store and subscribe to our show and download our iTunes Player One Podcast app for $1.99.
Ethan, you're on the show, not me.
Okay, and I don't actually.
No,
Greg,
you're supposed to yellow cheap. Just yellow cheap. That was your line.
Oh, right.
Man,
we're gonna call Rich Grisham.
Oh man,
he's always on the ball.
You can also get that on the Google Play, I believe it is, store for your Android phone. Also for $1.99. Ethan.
Also cheap.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
With
cheap?
that app,
cheap as hell. That's Rush Hour 2.
With that app, you can stream 501 episodes. Actually, more than that, because we started at episode 0. 502 episodes of the Player One Podcast, almost 10 years of content. You can send us messages, and you can tweet to us, and all those other things. And, of course, you can check out the show while we record live every Sunday night, approximately 8 p.m. Eastern, although tonight was 8:30, at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/P1Podcast. You can check us out on Facebook, Player One Podcast on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter at P1 Podcast. All kinds of fun stuff. And if you like what you've heard, again, I keep saying that, but if you want to support the show for things like, new microphones and to pay for the hosting, this show is not free. It's always going to be free to you, but it's not free to produce. You can head over to patreon.com/P1 Podcast and support the show. We would really appreciate it. That's our show. That's it. Thank you to Ethan.
Thank you very much. One quick update. Phil made the suggestion last week that the absolute best way for me to retain people on my blog was to change the URL frequently. So I have actually done it again. Yes. Yeah. So now it is the hopefully even easier to remember and slightly less business sounding gamingunicorn.com. And
I like it.
Yep, my last name is Einhorn. That means in German literally unicorn. So there you go.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, I learned something tonight. And Ethan, where so they can find you there, and where can they follow you on Twitter?
Ethan_Einhorn.
There you go. And Kevin Larrabee, one of our favorite guests. Happy to have you back this time. Thanks a lot, dude. Tell the internet where they can find you.
Yeah, you guys obviously mentioned it a couple times before, but Back in My Play is at fitcast.network. We're going to find not just that show, but a huge lineup of shows from fitness to just great interviews with cool people. The latest interview of Back in My Play was about a 35-minute interview with former CEO of Sega, Tom Kalinske. A really great chat it was like really surreal to be able to talk to him because, again, a guy that had so much influence over my childhood and the things that I got to play and in the war between Nintendo and Sega. It was a really good chat and a fantastic person. So go and check that out. But like we mentioned a couple times, we're going to have a whole summer of Sega Dreamcast, which starts with Dreamcast 101 this Friday, goes into 201, and we're going to make the whole college course. This is going to be a master's level course. And then we're going to finish off the summer with Shenmue 2. We're going to be doing a couple episodes on that, and then sprinkled throughout all that stuff, I'm doing individual chats, which is people that were in the industry or in the industry now, or were back then, or were in journalism or whatever, to talk about their personal memories. So that way we can just really, when I do something, I like to cover all the bases, and this way I can talk to everyone because, like I said before, everyone seems to love the Dreamcast, and everyone wants to talk about the Dreamcast. So, it's not going to be just like, JJ from 8-4, but I'm going to be talking with John Riccardi. I'm going to be talking with a huge cavalcade of people. Like I said, Ryan Payton reached out to talk about some Shenmue 2 stuff. So
Cool.
There's going to be a huge cavalcade of people that are going to be jumping on board to talk about this stuff. So go and check it out if you like the Sega Dreamcast, or if you want to know the best games that you should have for the Sega Dreamcast in 2016. The best mods and the best ways to keep your Dreamcast running like a absolute dream. My drive purrs like a kitten now. Barely makes any noise because I grease the gears. You can learn all about that and mods and all the other stuff coming up on the Summer Dreamcast at Back in My Play. Right?
Yes. Go listen.
So, hey, last quick question, Kevin. When you talked to Tom Kalinske, was it an interview in person or was it over the phone?
Over Skype.
Or over Skype. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Yeah.
He had video on, but we had to turn it off halfway through because the bandwidth on his side, I think, was a little rough.
Okay. Can't wait to listen to that.
Yeah. Great guy.
Let's do it again next week, guys.
Okay.
Have a great E3 week. Thanks for listening.
It's
Bye.
thinking. You can cut that out.